Another major story developing this hour. At least 69 people have been killed well, officials have said nearly 150 injured after a 6.9 magnitude earthquake in the Philippines.
Every 14 minutes and 31 seconds, the ground somewhere in the Philippines moves. Not a rumble. Not a tremor you sleep through. A measurable, catalogued seismic event, recorded, time-stamped, and added to a growing list that, in 2025, has reached numbers that have left the world's top seismologists quietly reclassifying what they thought they understood about how our planet breaks. Because here's what nobody is saying loudly enough. These earthquakes are not staying in the Philippines. To understand what's happening right now, you need to understand where the Philippines actually sits on this planet. Not geographically. Tectonically. Imagine 4 of Earth's largest tectonic plates arriving at the same intersection simultaneously, all moving in different directions, and none of them willing to yield. The Philippine Sea Plate driving westward. The Pacific Plate shoving from the east. The Eurasian Plate pressing south. The Sunda Plate pushing north. The Philippines doesn't sit near a fault line. The Philippines is the collision point, the geological equivalent of a multi-car pileup happening in permanent slow motion, measured in centimeters per year but releasing energy in seconds. At the heart of this collision lies the Cotabato Trench. The fault system PHIVOLCS. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology has been monitoring with increasing urgency throughout 2025. The Sultan Kudarat offshore swarm that began early this year has been directly tied to stress movement along this trench. What's significant is not just the frequency of events, it's the pattern. PHIVOLCS themselves have been careful to note that seismic sequences along the Cotabato system are inherently non-deterministic, meaning there is no automatic larger quake guaranteed to follow, but there is also no ceiling that rules one out. That scientific caution is important, and it's being ignored by the data. Historically, the Philippines recorded roughly 100 measurable earthquakes annually, with around 20 causing any meaningful damage. The rhythm was almost predictable: gradual stress release in isolated events, regional in scope, local in consequence. 2025 broke that rhythm completely. Since January, microquake activity has more than doubled against any comparable prior year. In September, a magnitude 6.9 earthquake struck Cebu, killing at least 79 people. 10 days later, a 7.4 magnitude event hit Mindanao. Within hours, a 6.9 magnitude aftershock followed, what seismologists classify as a doublet earthquake, 2 major ruptures in rapid succession along the same system. At least 10 more people were killed. Over 1,000 injured. But the death toll, as devastating as it is not the story that's keeping seismologists awake at night. The story is what's happening outside Philippine borders in the hours after each of these events. When a major earthquake strikes, it releases energy in multiple forms simultaneously. Some of that energy moves the ground you're standing on, some of it generates ocean waves. And some of it, this is the part that changes everything, travels through the Earth's crust as stress waves at approximately 8 kilometers per second, reaching distant fault systems and fundamentally altering their mechanical stability. Scientists call this Coulomb Stress Transfer, and it is not theoretical. It is documented. The 1992 Landers earthquake in California triggered seismic responses across multiple U.S. states. The 2012 Indian Ocean magnitude 8.6 event produced cascading elastic perturbations that registered in Japan. The 2004 Sumatra Andaman earthquake, which generated the deadliest tsunami in recorded history, was itself a product of the Sunda megathrust system, the same fault architecture that stretches across Indonesia today, and its energy reshaped stress fields across the entire Pacific basin. What's different in 2025 is the speed and the scale. Previous Coulomb stress transfer events propagated over days, sometimes weeks. The 2025 Philippine swarm is generating detectable stress responses in neighboring fault systems within minutes to hours. According to Dr. Ross Stein of the USGS, what we are witnessing is earthquake clustering on an international scale. Fault systems previously understood to be independent are now demonstrably responding to one another in near real time. Let's map exactly what that means geographically. Within 5 minutes of a major Philippine rupture, local tsunami generation begins, and initial stress waves enter the regional crust. Between 5 and 15 minutes, those waves reach Indonesia's Sunda megathrust, the same subduction system responsible for the 2004 catastrophe, where the Indo-Australian plate grinds beneath the Eurasian margin across thousands of kilometers. Indonesia's Banda Sea is currently showing a 300% increase in background seismicity against its own historical average. That is not a rounding error, that is a system under load.
Between 15 and 30 minutes, stress reaches the Malaysian peninsula. Now, Malaysia is not a high-hazard zone by regional standards, but it is not seismically inert either. The Bukit Tinggi area in peninsular Malaysia has recorded intraplate activity since 2007. Sabah experienced a damaging magnitude 6.0 event in 2015. Seismologists are not claiming Malaysia is about to fall into the sea. What they are saying is that zones previously recording minimal activity are now showing elevated background seismicity, and in some specific localities, events are being recorded for the first time in instrumented history. That distinction matters. Between 30 and 60 minutes, Taiwan and southern Japan begin detecting changes along the Philippine sea plate boundary. Taiwan sits directly on this boundary, and micro-ruptures are currently being catalogued at rates that concern regional monitoring agencies. And then there is Japan's Nankai Trough. Japan's Earthquake Research Committee has revised its probability estimates for a Nankai Trough megaquake multiple times in recent years. The current assessment places the 30-year probability somewhere in the 70 to 80% range, a number so high it almost stops functioning as a warning and starts functioning as a forecast. The Nankai Trough has ruptured in paired events historically, and stress accumulation patterns observed through 2025 are consistent with a system approaching critical threshold. Between 1 and 3 hours, pressure signals reach Australia's continental margin. Between 3 and 6 hours, full Pacific Ring-of-Fire stress redistribution is complete. 7 fault systems. 1 source. Hours, not days. Now consider what happens if the stress transfer doesn't just nudge these systems. What if it triggers them? Computer modeling of simultaneous multi-source tsunami generation produces results that challenge every existing warning framework. A Manila Trench rupture, the South China Sea megathrust that researchers have long flagged as tsunamigenic, could generate 8-meter waves. An Indonesian Sunda megathrust response at magnitude 8.0 or above creates 15-meter walls of water. A Japan Nankai event contributes 12-meter waves. Taiwan, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea each add their own wave trains to a Pacific that is suddenly receiving seismic energy from 7 directions simultaneously. The physics of what happens next is called constructive interference, wave superposition, where multiple tsunami sources don't simply add their heights together, they multiply in convergent zones. The South China Sea becomes a compression chamber for waves arriving from the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia simultaneously. The Celebes Sea combines Indonesian and Philippine wave trains. The broader Pacific Basin becomes an interference pattern from Japanese and Philippine sources that models cannot fully resolve. And our warning systems were not built for this. Current tsunami warning infrastructure has 4 structural limitations that the 2025 swarm has exposed simultaneously. National focus: each country monitors its own fault systems independently, with no unified cross-border processing. Single source modeling: tsunami simulations are calculated assuming 1 earthquake, not 7. Communication delays: international alerts require 10 to 15 minutes of coordination time that cascading events don't provide. And data processing limitations: existing systems cannot intake simultaneous multi-country seismic signals without catastrophic processing lag.
Dr. Pakastuiro Goda of the University of Bristol has stated plainly that cascading earthquake hazards represent a new class of disaster, one that current monitoring infrastructure was never designed to handle. We are fighting 21st century disasters with 20th century systems. The numbers behind that gap are staggering. 500 million people live within tsunami evacuation zones across the 7 countries now mechanically linked by stress transfer. Evacuation capacity across those nations was designed for single-country events. No protocol exists for simultaneous multinational evacuations. No unified command structure. No shared real-time data architecture. The Philippine earthquake swarm of 2025 has not caused a planetary catastrophe. Not yet, but it has done something arguably more significant. It has proven, through instrumented, peer-reviewed, real-time data, that the fault systems of the Western Pacific are not isolated. They communicate. They load each other. And when one fails catastrophically, the others don't simply witness it. They feel it, register it, and inch closer to their own thresholds. Every earthquake in the Philippines is now carrying information about every other fault system in the network. And what that information is currently saying is that the entire Western Pacific is under load, in a way we have no historical parallel for.
The question is no longer whether these systems are connected. We know they are. The question is, what happens the day they all answer at once? And that's our report. Stay subscribed for continued coverage of the 2025 Philippine earthquake swarm and emerging hazard analysis across the Pacific Ring of Fire.